Andor Season 2 has been building to this exact moment. The finale's right around the corner and yeah, it's gonna hit hard.
Eventually it'll hang us both, won't they? We set that course the first time we met.
Not everyone's making it out alive, and with so many characters' arcs hanging in the balance, this might be the most emotional Star Wars ending we've seen in years. We're talking major deaths, hidden backstories finally coming to light, and answers to questions that have been hanging over the show since episode 1. What happened to Mon's family?
Unprovoked genocide!
Is Kino still alive, and could Luthen be hiding more than we thought? By the end of this video, you have a full breakdown of what we think's coming, who survives, who doesn't, and the biggest twists that could completely change the way we see Andor leading into Rogue One.
I'm choosing for the both of us. I'm choosing the rebellion.
Before we jump in, don't forget to leave a thumbs up on today's video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. If you want to catch more Andor and wider Star Wars videos, you're in the right place. Now, with all that out of the way, let's dive into it.
If I've offended you, I apologize. If not, I'd appreciate you pointing that elsewhere.
Alright, so we've come a long way since the start of the season, and now everything's been set in motion for one hell of a finale. The Ghorman Massacre has happened, the Empire's framing it as unwarranted resistance from a known-to-be difficult planet, but anyone paying attention, people like Mon Mothma and Bail Organa, know it was an atrocity. The kind of event that forces people to choose a side, and for Mon, that's already come at a great personal cost. Her public denouncement is complete, she's officially crossed the point of no return, and now there's a good chance her family is in real danger because of it. The Empire knows who she is, and they know what she's done, and if she's already on the run, then Perrin and Leader might end up caught in a crossfire, whether the finale shows us that or not. Meanwhile, Cassian's back on his feet after everything: Sinar, Mina Rao, time spent on Yavin with his shoulder injury.
It's better, isn't it? That must be confusing.
He's finally re-engaged with the fight. We're nearly at Rogue One, and he's looking more and more like the rebel spy we first met there. But that raises the big question: what happens to everyone else? There are so many unresolved threads, so many characters whose stories could either come to a quiet end or blow up in the final hour. And that's one of the reasons Andor hits so hard. It doesn't always give us neat answers. Sometimes it lets things hang, because in this world, not every story gets closure. But what if that's the point? What if some of these open threads are the final gut punch the show's been building toward all along? And with that in mind, let's talk about the characters, who's safe, who's at risk, and which theories might actually pay off in the end. Now, beyond the major arcs, there are still so many loose ends in there, threads that have been quietly building since season 1, and honestly, some of them might never get tied up.
I'm looking for my sister.
But that uncertainty, that's part of what makes Andor so compelling. Like, take Mon's family, for instance. There were scenes reportedly cut where she returned to Chandrila after her speech to explain the situation to Leader, and she had it out with Perrin. Whether or not those make it into the finale, it'll be huge just to hear their reaction to what she's done, and more than that, it opens up a dangerous possibility. If there's an arrest warrant for Mon, the Empire might not go straight after her. They might use Perrin and Leader as leverage, bait, to draw her out. And considering how visible her family's been in the Coruscant elite circles, it's not a stretch to think that's their next port of call. Then there's Bix. She is proof that survival is possible in this story. After everything she's endured, she's still standing, but if she fled to Alderaan after leaving Cassian behind, let's just say that hope could turn to tragedy real fast.
We can do all the things we ever wanted. Everything we know we've missed.
And speaking of separation, we still don't know if she went back for B2. She's the kind of character who would, but Andor doesn't always show us these moments. Sometimes it leaves you wondering, and maybe that's the point. But yeah, the biggest questions may still lie in the background characters, some of them hiding secrets or even living double lives. There's a theory floating around that Clea is actually Cassian's sister. Now, I've never fully brought into it, but I'll admit, the dark rings around her eyes, that's not makeup, it's a visual cue, a sign of where she's from. And if you look back at the girls on Kenari, including Cassian's sister, they all seem to have darkness around their eyes. Could be nothing, or it could be something they've been planting since day one. And then we get to Luthen. Some fans think he was a Jedi, and I get why. The Kyber crystal, the timing of his rebellion lining up with Order 66, and the way he talks in that season 1 monologue. There's definitely something spiritual there.
You appeared when I needed you.
But personally, I think he's more like Cassian than we realise, someone whose entire life was wiped out by the Empire, and instead of falling apart, he's built something out of that pain, something sharp, something dangerous. Now, if that wasn't enough, there's an even wilder theory going around. Luthen is actually Dedra's father. Yeah, think about that. She spent the last 5 years obsessively hunting Axis, who could turn out to be her own dad.
I was raised in an Imperial kinderblock.
That's the kind of twist that would reframe everything, and suddenly, the wig Luthen wears in public, the double life. Maybe it's not just to disguise Luthen the rebel, but to disguise Luthen the known criminal, which Dedra's father apparently was, and maybe Luthen's not even his real name. But yeah, if something that big is hiding in plain sight, what else might the finale be holding back? And with so many characters teetering on the edge, let's talk about who's most likely to survive, and who might not make it, and what those choices would mean for the rebellion and for us. So yeah, we know a handful of characters make it to Rogue One. Cassian, Mon, Melshi, Xor, Bail Organa, Draven, and K2SO, they're safe, the rest fair game. And that's where things get tense. Dedra, for one, is rising through the ranks at the ISB way too quickly. If she doesn't die here, where is she during Rogue One? You'd think someone that high up would be all over that timeline.
Everyone that matters knows how well you've played this.
Her death wouldn't just make sense, it might be necessary to explain her absence later on, and let's be honest, for what she's done over the last 2 seasons, she probably deserves it. Anyways, we've also got Vel. As Mon's cousin and one of the earliest members of the rebellion, she's important, but perhaps not important enough to make it out. Her death would definitely cut deep, especially for Mon. She's already sacrificed her marriage and her daughter for the cause. Losing Vel, that might be the final blow that hardens her into the rebel leader we see later. And Luthen, look, we've dedicated an entire video to this already, and a lot of you dropped some amazing theories in the comments, but I still stand by it. He's not making it out.
I burned my life to make a sunrise that I know I'll never see.
And he knows it. The way he speaks, the decisions he makes, even the way he looks at Cassian, it all screams final mission. There are even some clues that suggest exactly when it could happen, but I'll link the video at the end for them. We've also got Wilman, who's a bit trickier. He's mostly been a background character, but he's slowly started stepping forward, especially in these last arcs with Saul and Luthen. If episode 10 pushes him into a bigger role, that might be the writing on the wall, but if he fades back into the background, I think he makes it out, with him becoming another rebel face in the background at Yavin, and a little bit like Will, there's Lonnie. Now, if Luthen goes, Lonnie's probably toast, but part of me would love to see him survive, because the idea of him being stuck in the ISB for the rest of his life, terrified that the Empire will eventually catch on, that's kind of poetic.
You used to tell me to wait.
Those days are gone.
The rebellion moves on and he's just left behind, sweating through every meeting with Major Partagaz. It would also give Kino Loy vibes, which we'll come on to later. But yeah, what if survival isn't always victory? What if for some of these characters, making it out is actually the harder ending? And that brings us to the most important part, what these deaths or survivals could actually mean for the rebellion, and what kind of legacy these characters might leave behind. Now let's circle back to Luthen for a moment. We've touched on the idea that he probably doesn't make it out of the story, but everything about his arc is pointing to something much deeper than just a tragic ending. There's the Kyber Crystal, something he's held onto despite never declaring any Jedi affiliation. There's that legendary monologue back in Season 1 where he laid it all bare. He's not doing this for personal glory. He knows he's not going to survive. He's already sacrificed his soul for a victory he knows he'll never get to see, and that's what makes him so powerful, and so doomed. He's built to burn, to do the things no one else will, and if the theory about him being Dedra's father is actually true, that just makes it even more brutal. Imagine that. She spent the last 5 years obsessed with Axis.
Catch them first, then make them famous.
Only to find out it was a father the entire time. Imagine this. She dies trying to take him down. He dies trying to protect what he sees in her. Not the Empire, but the idea that she still has some kind of future. This is Star Wars tragedy at its finest. I mean, there's a world where he could actually be her father, but neither of them recognise it because she was taken from him at such a young age. But let's switch gears here for a second, because there's one character whose fate, if not resolved, might possibly keep me up at night, and that's Kino Loy. I know, everyone says he didn't make it out in the Kino 5.
What? What did he say? Can't swim!
Broke all of us, but the show never actually confirmed his death. And if Andor's taught us anything, it's that the story doesn't always end when you think it does. Melshi randomly turned up at Yavin with no explanation. We know he kinda had to at some point, but what if Kino does too? What if he found a way out, or maybe even stayed and served the rest of his sentence? Unlikely, but not impossible. And wouldn't that be the most Andor thing of all? A man who led a prison riot, who found his voice again, somehow surviving, and then showing up at the very end, not as a warrior, but as a symbol that the rebellion isn't always about heroes, but also about people who find purpose when they've got nothing left to lose. So yeah, maybe I'm reaching, but I'm holding on to hope for Kino, and in a story like Andor, I think having those slivers of hope is exactly what makes the story so great. Now, if all of this is setting up emotional tragedy, personal sacrifice, and maybe even some final twists, what's left for the finale to reveal? That's what we'll explore next, because everything that's about to go down, here's what we do know. The Ghorman Massacre has already happened. Mon's extraction is underway. Well, we saw the start of it in episode 9, but she still wasn't on Yavin, right? And by the time this season wraps, we're basically standing at the doorstep of Rogue One. Everything's closing in fast, but what we don't know is how this final arc will twist the knife on the way out. Because Andor has never been a show that just checks off boxes, it's always held something back, something personal or chilling or quietly devastating, and I don't think we've seen the last of those gut punches just yet. Now, one theory I couldn't stop thinking about is tied to Luthen.
Who are you? What is this?
Not just who he is, but why he's built the rebellion the way he has. The wigs, the aliases, the obsessive secrecy, it's always been framed as a spy thing, but what if it's much deeper than that? What if Luthen isn't just hiding from the Empire? What if he's hiding from himself? Maybe he was someone else entirely. Someone erased from the records after the Clone Wars, someone who vanished because they had to, because their very existence would have put everything at risk. It would explain the way he talks about sacrifice, the way he carries the weight of the cause like it's already buried him. Maybe it has. And what if the only way he could build the rebellion was to kill off the man he used to be? That kind of twist wouldn't just redefine Luthen, it would reframe the rebellion itself. It wouldn't be built on glory or hope, it'd be built on ghosts, on people who gave up their names, their faces, their lives, because they believed the galaxy needed something more than survival, it needed real change.
And here we are.
And maybe there's no final lightsaber reveal, no big force moment, maybe the real twist is quieter, sadder, and way more Andor. What if the last thing we learn about Luthen is the one thing he tried hardest to forget? Maybe that's what Andor leaves us with, that the rebellion wasn't entirely built by heroes, but also by people willing to disappear for it. So yeah, the beauty of Andor is that we might not get every answer, and honestly, that's kind of the point. But the ones we do get, you can bet they'll stay with us, whether it's a quiet goodbye, a hidden truth, or one final gut punch. This finale is going to leave a mark. For me personally, I'd love to see Cassian and Vel team up one last time, just to bring things full circle. One more mission, one more fight, something to remind us how far they've both come. And yeah, if Kino Loy shows up, I'm not even going to pretend to be chill about it. That man's arc hit hard, and if he somehow made it out, I'll be standing up and cheering. But there's still this feeling, what if there's one last twist waiting for us, something that reshapes how we see everything that came before? Whatever it is, the finale is going to hit differently, and I can't wait. So what's the one twist you think Andor is still hiding before it all ends? As always, drop your thoughts, theories and wildest speculation down in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out our Luthen Vale one I mentioned earlier. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss any of our upcoming videos. Thanks for watching, I'll see you in the next one, and may the Force be with you.